and Petu Washte Mitapiapi. Good afternoon, relatives. This is Erin Thenelk, and I am a TA coordinator from the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, Tribal Youth Training and Technical Assistance Center. If you are looking for the Circle Peacemaking webinar, you have come to the right place. I want to welcome you all today. This is part 3 of our Philosophy and Practice, Restorative Justice and Restorative Approaches in Tribal Communities webinar. We are looking so forward to having this discussion today. We are welcoming back one of our restorative justice consultants, Chris Miner-Schweigert, and we are so very fortunate and excited to hear from the Navajo Nation Peacemaking Program with their coordinator, Roman Bitsui. Again, I'm Erin Thenelk, and I will be the facilitator today for the Peacemaking Circle webinar. If you could be so kind to add your name and where you are calling in from in the chat in the lower left-hand box, that would be wonderful. We really love to hear from all of you and see who we are talking with today. So if you could write your name and where you're hailing from this afternoon in the chat box in the left, we would be absolutely happy to give you a shout out as we go through this webinar. So thank you again for joining. We always like to open in a good way. Dr. Dee Bigfoot is the director for the Indian Child Trauma Center, and she also oversees our grants with the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency for our Tribal Youth TTA Center. And it's very important to us as Native practitioners and Native people to open in a good way, which is really conducive and congruent to working in restorative practices in our tribal communities. So I want to welcome you all in a good way and say thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. You could be in many different places, but you've taken the time out. And we're really hoping to provide a great webinar today and give you the gift of some information and promising practices with circles and communities for our tribal youth. So again, thank you so much for coming together today, relatives. We gather in a good way, and we're very happy to have you here. And this is a picture I took at the local elementary school up here in Prior Lake, Minnesota, where I live with my children, and my son is looking at a really awesome circle that the school has put together with trees in the back, because they have been implementing various circle work in the elementary up here. So before we continue on, I want to pass it back to Nick, if you could fill everyone in on the technical instruction.
Hello everyone, thank you for joining us today. During the webinar, the lower left-hand corner is a chat box. If you have anything to chat about concerning the webinar or anything for the presenters, feel free to chat in there. If you have any questions regarding any of the subject matter, please use the lower right-hand box, which is the Q&A box. And at the end of the presentation, we'll go through and read each question, and our presenters will answer those. In the middle, the bottom, is the presentation for download. That's today's presentation, available in PDF form and PowerPoint. Also, there is another download there that has been given. We put everybody on mute so that we won't get any kind of background noise, but feel free to utilize these boxes. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much, Nick. I want to welcome Dion to the call, Margaret, Alzeda, Gabriella, Kathy, Helen, Kurt, and the rest of you that have put in the chat box your names and where you're from. For those of you that are just joining, we're beginning our Circle Peacemaking webinar. We're so happy that you have been able to join today. So the webinar overview today, we're going to go through the learning objectives next. Then we'll provide a brief introduction of our Tribal Training and Technical Assistance Center. Chris Miner-Schweigert, one of our expert consultants, will be giving a brief introduction of the Circle peacemaking process. And then we are very honored to have Roman Bitsui from the Navajo Nation Peacemaking Youth Apprentice Program. He'll be sharing information on their long-standing, well-known traditional peacemaking program that has been occurring in the Navajo Nation. So we're very fortunate to have him today. Then we'll have some questions and we'll close. Okay, so the learning objectives for today's webinar, we look to introduce a contemporary history of Circle peacemaking. We're looking to identify key components of Circle peacemaking. We are hoping to promote understanding of keeping circles. We are looking for you to increase understanding of the types of circles and the potential applications. And lastly, we are hoping that you will learn how tribal youth can participate in Circle peacemaking. So those are the learning objectives that we are looking to cover today through the webinar and with the presenters. Again, my name is Erin Thinnock. I am a TA coordinator at the OJJDP Tribal Youth Training and Technical Assistance Center. As I said before, it's hosted at the Indian Country Child Trauma Center at the University of Oklahoma Health Sciences Center. We are guided underneath Dr. Dee Bigfoot, who is one of the most renowned presenters and experts in child trauma in Indian country. We're so fortunate to have her as a guide and to oversee our Tribal and Training Technical Assistance Center. You can see there that's our contact information, our phone number, there's our email, and the website. So what do we do at the TTA Center? Well, we support our grantees. We have tribal youth programs, which are under Purpose Area 9 for OJJDP, as well as Tribal Healing to Wellness Courts, which is Purpose Area 8. And we're looking to support tribal juvenile justice issues. We work with tribes from all over the country. We receive a cohort every October, and we begin strategic planning with them in the various tribal prevention programs and tribal healing to wellness courts. But we also are able to take TA requests from any federally recognized tribe. What we do is we provide culturally appropriate programming and evaluation. Again, we are guided by trauma-informed care principles. We hope to provide effective prevention and intervention approaches. And we have a plethora of resources, journal articles, webinars, just all kinds of different resources that we are able to provide to our grantees and to tribal communities in general. And what we hope to do is reduce the number of youth in the juvenile justice system and reduce exposure to trauma. Here is what our website looks like. You can find it again at www.tribalyouthprogram.org. My colleagues have been working really hard. We're going through some revamping of the webinar or of the website. We're currently uploading some more excellent resources for you to look at building tribal youth prevention programs and tribal healing to wellness courts, as well as to help with strategic planning. So I would really encourage you to visit the website and check us out and look at our resources. And if you have any information or if you have any questions about any of the information that we provide, please feel free to contact us through the webpage. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move on to a few poll questions. Nick, if you could push or pull over the first one. We always like to get to know who is on the call today. So I know that some of you have put your name and where you're from down in the chat box. Thank you so much for doing that. We'd like to get to know a little bit more about who we're talking with today. So if you could possibly type in the question and answer box, what is your context for working with tribal youth? Are you in prevention programming? Are you in healing to wellness? Are you working in the schools? Are you a tribal administrator? Are you a parent? Are you an elder that works with tribal youth? If you could type in your answers down in the question and answer, we would love to hear from you what your context for working with tribal youth is. Great. It looks like we have some tribal healing to wellness coordinators that have answered. And we have some students, a tribal prosecutor, a consultant and trainer, we have someone from the Restorative Justice Program at the John Marshall Law School. Welcome. We also have tribal child welfare investigator. Okay, wonderful. It looks like we have lots of participants that have been working in tribal communities with our tribal youth. It looks like we have quite a few people from tribal court and juvenile justice. Great. So we have a lot of wonderful information for you today on circle peacemaking and how it can fit into juvenile justice as well as in other prevention programs. Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, so Nick, if you could end that one. And before we begin with our presenters, we wanted to ask you as participants, when you think of the word circle or when you hear the word circles, what comes to mind? If you could provide your answer in the question and answer box, that would be great. I know for me, when I hear the word circle, I think about our traditional way of sitting in ceremony, or I think about the medicine wheel with concepts with balancing our emotional, physical, mental, and well-being and spiritual. Okay, great. It looks like a lot of you are answering circles. When you hear that word, it comes to mind some of the things as a healing process, listening, respect, contributing, balance, togetherness, connection, discussion, and helping others. Share, togetherness, culture, wholeness, conversation, community, and open communication. Great. Thank you so much for providing those responses. Life, talking, sharing, healing, and prayer. Thank you again for providing that. I think that many of you have restorative values underlying when you're hearing the word circles, and I think that is going to be very congruent to what you hear today. So thank you so much. Nick, if you could go ahead and close out that question. Wonderful. All right, we'll go ahead and move on through. I would like to introduce Chris Miner-Schweigert. She has been the lead presenter on the last two webinars of the three-part Restorative Justice and Restorative Approaches in Tribal Communities webinar. We are very happy to welcome her back. She has ample experience in circles and restorative justice in the juvenile justice system and in schools in tribal and non-tribal communities. And she was first trained back in 1998. We welcome Chris Miner-Schweigert, and go ahead, Chris. I will pass it over to you if you want to do a more personal introduction.
Great. Thanks, Erin. I guess I just want to use the time and not talk about myself, but move more into circle. It's such an opportunity and an honor to do this. I've done thousands of circles, but it not only honors me, but the people have taught me. And one of my elders and teachers Dakota elder, Mark LaPointe, he would talk in circle and be a circle keeper and mentored us that wisdom that's not shared, it's lost. And he had a real value for it's important to speak and share, and the way you project your voice is very important. So I just want to let everybody know that, you know, I'm coming with this and from a good place of heart. Erin mentioned that I was, officially trained or got like a training certificate in 1998, but I see more of my journey beginning in 1996 when I attended my first Red Road gathering in Vermilion, South Dakota, and I also got to experience a NEPI there. And that really laid the foundation and the groundwork for these thousands of circles that I did over the last 10 to 15 years, and from very simple things to very serious things, and it just a number of topics and situations from schools and prisons to reentry circles to diversion circles for underage driving, teen drivers, underage drinking, drug court participants, people that wouldn't be leaving the prison. We go in. I worked for the Minnesota DOC. So all across those, the teaching and the ways that I did circle fell within specific approaches and guidelines, and they were informed by my exposure and participation in Lakota ceremony. So I have just a short amount of time here, so I'll touch on some things, but I really want to encourage you to and invite you to ask questions. It's just so exciting we do these webinars. Like, we have people from Alaska to Hawaii, Minnesota, Illinois, South Dakota, Oklahoma on with us, so I just invite me to come to a training. No, I get to go to Alaska next month, so maybe we'll, Erin and I will get to meet some of you in that context. So, oops, then the clicker doesn't work. Okay, so when we talk about circle peacemaking, let's think about those two words separately at first. I found a challenge here because circle, we started to gather around fire and we started to develop language, and we had to find out from each other, are we friend or foe? Can we work together here? And so you think about that language, that circle predates language. And for some people, peacemaking is just a way of life. Like we'll hear from Roman and the Navajo Nation. So it has no history, it just is. Bears know to sleep in the winter, and the salmon know to swim upstream because they have not forgot their original instructions. And I think about circle peacemaking, it's part of our DNA and our original instructions to take care and be kind to each other and to not be unkind to nature. So when you try and put a history on that, it can be really, really challenging. And when I think about the history, I also think about the future, and it's like, wouldn't it be wonderful that we looked at it just is? We don't study the nature, what's the history of oxygen, right? It's just there that circle and peacemaking would become that return to that kind of original instruction. The second challenge when we want to try to talk about a history is I just didn't want to do another, white narrative or the Anglo-European American story of that. I was fortunate enough to be at a restorative justice conference where Honorable Judge Yazzie presented, and a lot of times in the restorative justice world we talk about Howard Zare as the grandfather of restorative justice and Kay Pranis as the grandmother of Peacemaking Circle, but Honorable Judge Yazzie was very clear in saying Howard Zare is not my grandfather, and the honoring of indigenous wisdom came a little bit later, in my opinion, than it should have. So even though Girl Scouts have campfire time or use a talking piece, or social skills programs in schools have a program called Tribes, there's a well-intentioned, but sometimes appropriation can happen. So that's a challenge when you're talking about the history, to make sure that we're looking at it and examining where these things came from in our history. The third challenge when we talk about this Peacemaking Circle history would be that it happens all around the world. You could look in the 1980s, and in Japan, Toyota was using something called quality circles, and I'm sure that was informed by indigenous people. Even if you take Australia, a circle in Auckland is going to be different than Sydney. People doing circle with urban youth in California might look very different than it does across the plains. So there'll be a website I'll reference with a little bit more history, but I also want to think about history in terms of his story or her story or their story. And we think about our personal history as the lived experience that we have. And just kind of note here that I also have a tree on this particular slide. But the things I encourage people to think about is the teacher for you of Circle Way. Some of those beautiful words, open communication, togetherness, collaboration. Who informed you of those ways? Who were you in circle with? Who was a keeper? What experiences did you have from holding the talking piece or holding space and respect for someone? Because these things of unity and healing, they don't just happen in circle, but they happen in our lives. And that helps inform us on how to be in the way of walking the path of being a circle keeper or a peacemaker. One of the things I really appreciate about Living Justice Press and the Minnesota Department of Education is those are people in Minnesota, and that's where my circle training family resides in geography, or part of that family. They would want people to ask, who trained you and what methods were you trained in? So we're kind of following this family tree idea of where we learned our circle way or our peacemaking from. So remember, relationships are bilateral, and as long as those teachers and community and the programs you work for or the systems that you're involved in that you do restorative with, those are impacting you as much as you're impacting them. So it maintains integrity. You have a fidelity to the process because you're doing it like people that you're related to. When you're related to something, it increases your commitment and a responsibility to carry it in a good way. And when you do it with these ways of looking at your personal history, it's going to be safe for you, and any lessons that you learn can be shared. I had an experience where we were working with a biracial family, and the other circle keeper and I were kind of debriefing, and she experienced me sort of cutting someone off from expressing themselves, and I thought I maybe stopped a violent outburst in circle, but her experience and background was different than mine, and so she saw, you know, an African-American man, a black man, really expressing himself, and so that was a little different. So what we started to do was meet and gather, and this whole process of people of color in the cities have a circle gathering that meets, and that extended out about how can we learn lessons and share those so we can all do this a little bit better. When we're related to something, and we're all related, it becomes more as part of the way that we carry it, and then we're more able to be circle keepers in different aspects of our life. I'm trying not to talk fast, but it's hard because I know I have a lot of stuff to get in. This is the Living Justice Press website I mentioned that has this beautifully written history about circles in relevance to the Plains population. And again, this is close to where I did a lot of my professional work before I moved back to South Dakota in 2015. This is a part of the Native American Relief Fund, and if you go to this website and you click on their tribal models for peacemaking, you'll also see some different tribal law. The right side of the page then will have frequently asked questions, and you look down that page, and there's several articles and links that I found very helpful. Well, someone in my extended family, a teacher and mentor, is retired Judge Janine Geske. She has an article on there. If you keep scrolling down the page, you'll see a beautiful grid that has some differences about court mediation and peacemaking, and Robin will be talking about that more. But part of the piece I appreciated on this website, too, was local natives helping non-native people, and they helped institute some of the different programs. It obviously wouldn't have been called sentencing circles, you know, a few ancestor generations back before there were courts and things like that, or before it was even allowed to use traditional Native practices within a court system. And that's where it kind of segues into one of my teachers and mentors is Kay Pranis. And this is the basis for a lot of my work, and some of these are going to seem quite natural, but I have found that, and especially teaching teachers sometimes that the dominant or mainstream culture, these are not natural. To think, for me, I was able to connect to these because there's 7 of them, and there's 7 sacred directions. There's 7 major energy centers or chakras in our body. So I was able to really connect to these and use them in teaching and having people connect to these as a way of doing peacemaking circles. I understand it. And I just go through these briefly. The first of people being everyone's good, wise, and powerful. That's even for the tough kids or the kids from hard places, the kids that experience trauma and maybe they act that out. Sometimes we only see the good, wise, and powerful in people that we think that are projecting what our value of that is. But sometimes the wisest child is surviving, and those coping mechanisms might not work out later. Or if an adult, a trusting, caring adult, was not trustworthy or caring to a child, they become protective things, and those can be they become protective, and that can be very powerful. Our board of directors was very new, and not all the board members were well-versed in restorative, and I remember being asked the questions once, well, what does interconnectedness even mean, and why do we have that on our website? And we were the Restorative Justice Program. I don't think I have to elaborate much to this audience about that but it's a way of finding that. And in circle trainings, I often ask people to share those stories. And there's a great book called Consequential Strangers, and it talks about how people we don't even know can have influence over us in these ways that we're deeply connected. Humans have a desire to be in a good relationship. Oftentimes we don't know how, and it's helping someone learn how to connect in a good way or understand what has happened to them that they're unable to connect in a good way. We need to treat everybody for the gifts that they bring, and sometimes those that challenge us the most, it can be hard. I remember early on in my social work career, back at the time that Jeffrey Dahmer was, it was like staff meetings about a youth, and he'll be the next Jeffrey Dahmer, and I often speak up and say, why don't we identify children and say, who will be the next Colin Powell, or who will be the next Oprah Winfrey, who will be the next Roman Bitsui? But calling kids to their best instead of identifying those weaknesses and those things that make it difficult for everyone. Everything we need to make positive change is already here. We live in a Western society of medicating things or go get some therapy, but can you imagine we could see that we have the elders in our community, we have role models, we have the strength and the wisdom to do that. Is a beautiful way to look at things and just see people that everything they need to make positive change is already there. And it's quite interesting to teach and remind people that human beings are holistic. And I especially appreciate Dr. Bigfoot's work of the medicine wheel with the relational aspect and the spiritual as absolutely every part in touching on all of those. It's our job as the big people to help little people have practices that build from that core self. So these things are a way of being, and for me that builds on the circle keeping and the work that you do with someone before you sit in circle, while you sit in circle, and after you sit in circle. This next slide is slightly adapted out of Kay Pranis's book, which she wrote with Mark Wedge and Barry Stewart, the Peacemaking Circle book, and the Little Book of Circle Making. So at the top along there, you see these 3 things: connection, community building, and healing. So we can identify a plant by the fruit that it produces, the leaves, maybe the bark on the tree, and that's what's going to help us. We'll know that our work is producing those things. And then you look along the trunk of the tree or the middle here on the right side. These are the things, the action we take and what we do to have a peacemaking circle. And what informs the roots, what nourishes the tree, we have to be mindful, the rain and the soil that influences or would help or hurt these outcomes are these shared values of being human, teachings and wisdom from the medicine wheel, and then the ancient teachings we know about how we relate to each other. So if we look at the tree a little bit closer along the trunk, then are these elements. And I intentionally kept it to those 7 because I guess I like the number 7, or I was going to say there's 7 letters in bingo, but no, that's not right. there's not 7 letters in circles. Okay, I shouldn't have had peanut butter right before the ceremony. First one is ceremony. This is where we have an intentional open and close. We set the space, how we're going to relate to each other. We create a good energy and ask others to step up to that. We're abstaining from something when we hold that space, and maybe that's gossip or talking out of turn or not respecting the talking piece. But it's really important to prepare people into that time and then to finish and have something that signifies we're going back to relating to each other a little bit differently. The values, the way that I use values and have been taught, and I have seen it be effective time and time again, is we identify those and we write them on a paper plate, put them in the center of the circle, but we ask someone about a relationship outside of circle, and what's just the absolute most important thing for that. Outside of that, it just wouldn't be the same. And we ask people to write that on the plate, we put those in the center, and then we talk about how we can bring those that are outside the circle into the circle. How can we use these in a good way? And that usually takes up all the things that I kind of cringe when I see circle rules, and I like to do guidelines are different. The guidelines for the circle right there are in the values. And if we hold respect for each other, that means we're not going to talk out of turn, or we're not going to take all the time when we have the talking piece. So I do talk about some of those values, some of those guidelines when I keep, but I like to bring people back to using those values. We know that storytelling is transformative, it's healing, and it's helpful, but on the other side of that is story listening. When someone bears witness to us, it can be that's transformative, that we're being heard. It can be a simple question as you get to know people in the circle, like asking, what did you notice on the way to the circle today? It can be with a lot of time and space that people are allowed to share their stories. We did some circles back in River Falls for people who had had a history of attempting suicide or suicidal gestures, and I can't remember the exact neutral label we put on that. And then we have people who experienced it, like a mother whose son died by suicide. And she had quite a long storytelling time in our circle. And it was absolutely, nature was working in the circle as well. We had a basement room that had large ground level windows, and the wind was just whipping, and the hail and the rain and the thunder, and she was sobbing as through she was telling her story. And as she sort of worked through it and her energy kind of came back in and down, the storm outside subsided, and there's such power in storytelling and the helpers that help people in telling story. It's going to be a lot longer training, I guess. I need to pick up my time to share it, but the stages of circle are getting acquainted, building relationship, addressing issue, and taking action. There's intentional activities and specific ways to set up and use those different stages of the circle. It's important that we connect with people and get a safe place for sharing before we move into addressing issues, and we need to have a full discussion of things before we can come up with a plan and have everybody fully informed. The talking piece is just a tool. It's really a treasure. The way of using it that I found most helpful is I don't suspend it very often. It goes all the way around. I do believe you can go to the left and the right, and that comes from stories shared with me by an elder. Some people do it differently, maybe a popcorn style where they put it in the middle and anyone can take it, and I found kind of the extroverts tend to dominate the time. I'm going to talk about being a keeper more on the next page, and then in consensus, Sometimes we think consensus is everybody agrees, but it's in circle. It's coming to an agreement where all voices are heard and that people can live with what we've decided. If you think of consensus, oh, majority rules or something, that's not exactly what it is. It's different in circle, and it's a way of being in community that there's a lot of understanding, and understanding doesn't necessarily mean agreement. Okay, so this way of being circle keeper, that's me in the center of the circle. I'm just starting to describe it for the kids. This was a training. The teachers are standing around the outside with a fishbowl. I ask them to honor the same values that when we get to that part, but mostly the teachers were just learning, and I appreciate when teachers learn from children, and we put them in that certain place. And the kids haven't had to fight to hear their voice heard, so they come to circle quite easily and naturally. I think keeping, when it comes from a place of heart, there's a certain vulnerability and transparency if you're going to come from a good place. To be present is to tune in, to be ready and able to draw on different techniques as needed. If you have young people that just aren't feeling safe and connected, don't move forward with deeper topics in your circle. Try different questions, or try having the kids come up with a question. But you're present to what's happening for the group process, and you're able to use that to help move people ahead sort of in the moment. Trusting the process. The circle is stronger than any one of us. Circles are a strong container. They can hold a number of things. And if you can trust that, and you're a hollow bone whistle when you're keeping the circle. It's not about you. That's part of being having a humility and understanding that. You draw wisdom from experience, and you apply that carefully. You try and walk in balance as the keeper, and just make sure be the most respectful person that you can be to everyone, and you help bring that out in others. You make it so safe. The humor part, it's just like, hey, not that serious. I like to use corny jokes. I think it shows a vulnerability, a laughter, especially when I remember like the students that got underage drinking tickets at a college town in Wisconsin. They're like, what's the big deal? Everybody does it. So I'd make those jokes, and, you tell a group of people about your Shetland pony that had a cold, and, oh, he was a little hoarse, and, they kind of are like, oh, she's too goofy. But you're not threatening if you're trying to be funny. It also has to be genuine. Okay, so I just want to tell a couple of stories. This picture is from a book. It's an excellent, excellent book. It's gotten Young Reader Awards. A teacher could read it to younger grades, but it's kind of a middle school level. Brett's English teacher saw a decline in him, and she told his hockey coach and his parents, and I think it was either by a room search or a drug test that they found out that Brett was using marijuana. So he was removed from the hockey team, and his frustration then, at the end of the school day, he walked by the teacher and he said, bang, you're dead, one less teacher tomorrow. She was deeply impacted by this, and she was pregnant at the time. The principal at the time at that school was on our board of directors, and he decided he did suspend Brett, and we held a circle, and the school had some other parameters on what needed to happen, and a circle was sort of like a checkbox on one of those things that needed to have happen. So I had meetings with some of the peers, the principal, the family. They had a large extended family network. So I did the pre-circle work of meeting with people, what the circle was about, how we could talk about it, how we could support the teacher, how we could support Brett. The teacher was not able to participate in the circle at that time. So we had the circle where we talked about what happened, how he was impacted, how she was impacted, just as I described on the previous slides. And one of the things that we did was we finished with stories of a time that we had made a mistake and made it right. And we had ribbons as the closing piece, and we tied our ribbons together and shared our stories. And we found out from one of Brett's sort of in their white family, she was not really his aunt, but a close family friend, and she was a probation officer, and she spoke from some of that. But she actually shared a very deep and powerful story about relinquishing a child for adoption in that story, and it kind of shifted. There was such courage and vulnerability in that. So it was a very powerful circle, and Brett went on. His follow-up circle went well. We had a plan in place. He talked with his peers. His peers were appropriately confrontational with him in the circle, talking about how he pushes jokes with that teacher too far sometimes, and it was very powerful. Well, 7 years later, I have volunteers from the local church helping with a victim impact program, and Brett's mom comes up to me. And she says, I don't know if you remember me. I'm Brett's mom. I'm like, yes, oh my gosh, how is he doing? Well, he was able to graduate from high school. He actually moved to Alaska and worked for like a games, fish, and parks program. And her husband went up to Alaska to help him move home. And in the top drawer of his dresser drawer, 7 years later, were the ribbons from that circle. And they were cherished piece for him as he moved through that. Real quick about Maria. Maria bought a used iPod from one of her friends. In an entirely different case in the community, Micah had broken in, had several burglaries, several houses. There were adolescents in the community were breaking and stealing things from each other, and the police were being called all the time, and the police really wanted to fix it. And Maria's friends said, say that you bought the iPod from Micah. And so they sort of let this go out in this courtroom where there's been a lot of teenagers, and they wanted to make an example of her. So the police used their cuff and stuff technique, which means as soon as Maria said her lie, which she got this iPod from Micah on the stand, she was immediately arrested, taken out of the courtroom, taken downstairs, booked for felony perjury. Wisconsin has a law that if you commit a crime at 17, you're an adult. So at 17, she was charged and in the county jail. Has to call her parents, get the $5,000 for the attorney, their retainer. It takes all their Christmas savings, their house payment money. Their dad has to get a second job. Maria's only sibling is a 7-year-old sister. So I'm going to pull people together for the circle, and one of the things that my resources I have are local drug court participants, because we did circle with them, that would volunteer and do community service hours by sitting in circle. And this was the circuit court process, and I wanted the municipal court judge to get just a little more flavor about what restorative justice was like. So I set it up to have Abby, the drug court participant, and our judge be part of that circle. And explain to people about speaking from the heart. They go through usually a 2-day circle training before they participate. During the circle, Maria just started crying at like the first rounds, usually about those values, just crying and remorseful to her family. Her family sort of took to the circle with lots of sharing. I remember her sister shared, I don't care that we didn't get to have Christmas. I just don't want you to have friends that make you go to jail. The judge never did disclose that she was actually a judge. She was able to affirm the family and how much the father expressed his love for his daughter, and it was quite powerful. And once again, I forgot to bring a notebook, and so the plan was written on a paper plate. And one of the things on the plan for her circle outcome plan, and this came from Abby, was that Maria look herself in the mirror every day and say, I love you and I forgive you, until she was able to do it without crying. When Abby shared her drug court recovery experience and going to her sobriety and that being an assignment she had, it had almost all of us in tears in the power of that, and Maria reluctantly but did agree to do that. So we had 1 or 2 follow-up circles. I mean, things really went well for Maria and her family. It was beautiful that a felony was diverted for her from her record by doing the participation. Her and her sister volunteered on a parade in the community for our nonprofit and threw out candy. And At one of the follow-up circles, her mother had said, well, she doesn't pull out her hair anymore. And after psychiatrists and psychologists and counselors and medication, and here all it took was these circles, and she doesn't pull out her hair. Well, later I asked Maria, I said, what was that about that your mom was talking about? And Maria said that she had been diagnosed and suffered talotrichomania, the pulling out of the hair. She even showed me pictures of bald spots over her temples and time in her life that she had to wear bandanas frequently. And I asked her what that was about. And she said when she was a little bit younger than her sisters, one of her cousins had said to her, you're not really part of this family. We're all Mexican and you're white, so you're not really part of the family. And it wasn't until Circle that she experienced she really felt loved and part of her family, and so she stopped pulling out her hair. So the felony diversion was great, but also the fact that we sort of, the Circle, like I said, it's a powerful place. So I apologize that I have gone over 5 minutes, so I will turn it over to Erin, and hopefully I've covered what I need to cover, and we're ready for the next step.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris, for giving an example, a couple of case examples. I think it's really important to hear what the process of setup and the flow of circles and positive outcomes that can result as implementing circles within school systems and within the juvenile justice system. I really like how you pointed out that, circles are very much relationship-centered and youth-focused, and they really have the potential to find the potential of each child and youth, and that every community can decide what the circles look like. So thank you so much for sharing that. Nick, let's go ahead and pull up one of the questions. Based upon what Chris shared with the examples of circle elements that are the elements that are commonly found in implementing circles, which of these have you already been implementing or using in your program or your community? You could just, it looks like, you could just click on some of the elements that you've been using in your community. It looks like storytelling, values, ceremony, talking pieces. As Chris was saying, it's interesting. I'm a budding circle practitioner. I've been studying restorative justice probably for the last 6 years, but I'm very much in the beginning stages. And I know that when I first was learning from trainings, professional trainings, it was, as a Native person, it was very interesting to hear very much the values that Chris talked about and the circle elements, and understanding that, wait a minute, this has been a part of our culture and our way of life for a long time. So we'll hear more about that from Roman here shortly, about how really looking at what the traditional values and ideas around circles, but then also maybe, exploring what the strengths can be in contemporary approaches. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and just move forward. If we can close out of that poll, we're going to go ahead and move forward. And it's my great pleasure to introduce Roman Bitsui. He's here with us today from the Navajo Nation Peacemaking Youth Apprentice Program. He's the coordinator for the Navajo Nation Peacemaking Program. He's a traditional advisor, having studied Navajo culture, ceremony, and medicine for about 30 years. He's also the first Navajo to graduate from Princeton and has served the Navajo government in many roles. As executive director of the Navajo Hopi Land Commission, Roman was responsible to bring resolution to a 100-year dispute about the boundary between these tribes and to negotiate with the federal government for leases for so-called resistors and secure benefits for approximately 16,000 Navajo people. So he has great experience traditionally within the community as a circle peacemaker, but then also overseeing the Navajo Nation Peacemaking Program. So we are very, very fortunate to have Roman with us today. So Roman, I'll go ahead and pass you the ball for presenting. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me just do a formal introduction in Navajo. I'm a Chisha ki ani bashichin deschini dashichido tlaslan dashinala tlaslan sado isinasha. Just basically introduce my 4 clans, then from raised in an area called Big Mountain, right in the middle of the Navajo Reservation. We have a 3-branch government since 1989. We have the executive, the legislative, and judicial. And under the judicial branch is where we are located, the peacemaking program. The judicial branch is made up of courts, judges who apply the statutory law to determine winners, losers, guilt, and innocence. That's the Anglo-based approach to law. And it's commonly, we commonly refer to this process as a vertical process, where the judge sits up on up higher and wears a black robe, and the lawyers are basically on both sides within a court setting. But if we are to have both legal and cultural sovereignty, the Navajo people must also have culturally based justice. And this is commonly referred to as a horizontal justice. That's the role of peacemaking. Since time immemorial, the Diné people have been unified as a people by strong tradition. Kepe Hajonahortle is a translation that we have that describes peacemaking. Our traditions are based on teachings that were given to us by the holy people, so that we could live in harmony with our world, our fellow Diné, our clan, and families, and ourselves too, so that we can walk in beauty. We have what we call the fundamental law. The fundamental law consists about 4 types of laws that we have. The natural law is what we refer to as what things that we cannot change. Actually, the natural, traditional, and customary law are things that we cannot change. The natural law is basically talks about the 4 elements that we can't live without: the air, the earth, the fire, and the water. Those things we can't survive without it. And then there are things that we cannot change, the 4 seasons. We have the spring, the summer, the autumn, and the winter. The time of day we cannot change. The sun came up this morning, and it's going to go down in the evening. There's going to be death, because that's required by the holy people. The sun can come up the next day. So those are some of the teachings that we provide, is that there are things that we cannot control. The traditional law is basically the holy people's what has been placed for us by the holy people. We in a time of emergence, we came up through 4 worlds: the black world, the blue world, the yellow world, and the white world. So in emerging from the womb of the earth, there has been certain challenges, and there has been guidance by the holy people. There are certain rules, there are certain laws that have been placed on us by the holy people on how to survive and survive any challenges. And then there is the customary law. Because the holy people went back to their place, we have ceremonies, and we conduct those ceremonies so that our people are healthy. We have in traditional setting, the changing woman was found on top of one of the sacred mountain, and she was basically placed on there by the holy people, and for a reason, for a purpose, and that is that there were certain monsters that were eating people, and we had to get rid of it. So the changing woman was found on one of the sacred mountains that we call Chol'e, and she was raised by the holy people, the first man, first woman. And when she turned 12 years old, she became a woman, and certain ceremonies were conducted. We call kinaldak, the puberty ceremony. And when that happened, later in life, she had two twins, and those two twins was the one that was given certain. It's a long story, but basically they had to travel to their father, the sun, to get the weapon to get rid of the monsters that were killing people. So in the customary setting, the customary law, we perform those ceremonies for our young girls that turn that change from a girl to a woman. And similarly, certain type of ceremonies are conducted for the boys as well. So that's customary law. The common law is what we have today, which is basically a mixture of the vertical as well as the horizontal. It's the integration of all these laws that we have that are written down, like the Constitution and so forth. What we have as Navajo. So that's basically what we have when we talk about the fundamental law. The Diné are a participatory democracy. Before encountering the Europeans, we selected 12 peace chiefs and 12 war chiefs who govern us. Before there was a treaty with the United States government, prior to 1868, the peace chief and the war chief would convene, and this is basically a peacemaking sessions that they had. The peace chiefs would talk about the environment, how life was on among the people, whether there were enough rain, whether there were enough food, and how was the hunting. So those type of things were discussed by the peace chief. The war chief basically talked about the new people that were encroaching up on our land, the warfares. So through this peacemaking, certain things, certain determinations were made. and how to address those things. So that's how peacemaking was set up. In Navajo, we call it Nachit. And in the process that we have in peacemaking, there are certain roles. There is Nalchiti, people that are going through the court process. They have to find their way to harmony, and they have to find direction. So I'll get into that one in the later slide. But we resolve disputes through a process we now call peacemaking. Peacemaking takes place in a discussion facilitated by a skilled person chosen because of his or her wisdom and objectivity. The peacemaker is knowledgeable of the cultural teachings, is knowledgeable of the history of the families that are involved. And that is where similarities between peacemaking and Anglo-American alternative dispute resolution, such as mediation and arbitration, stops. In comparison, the Anglo-American alternative dispute resolution, either mediation or arbitration, is that the process is to avoid litigation. There's limited parties involved. The discussion centers on facts that could be brought into evidence. The resolution is based on cause of action, statutes, risk of adverse court or jury verdict. The focus is on money damages attributed to a party because of a fault or guilt. And the Navajo peacemaking process is to find justice. All parties affected, including extended family and community members, are involved. Discussion centers on restoring all persons to harmonious coexistence. Resolutions is based on community values and definition of a just outcome. Some naliye, money, service, or things of value may be exchanged to restore balance. Guilt is irrelevant. The peacemaking goal is healing. It's more of a ceremony and not punishment. The peacemaker facilitates honesty among the participants and within themselves so that they can recognize and address the issues that have caused their shared harm. By doing so, they can heal and agree on a shared solution. Peacemaking program that we have is inclusive of all faiths, meaning that people in our society today, people are either traditional or they could be a member of the Native American church, or they could be Christian, and we cannot discriminate. And the children and family, that the focus is basically to restore hojon for them. Hojon is to be truly at peace with yourself and one with your surrounding. Status and respect accorded to elders, that's a priority. And protection of vulnerable adults. One of the priority is basically to address the extreme family discord and restorative justice. Here is just some of the statistics that we have. the young, the Navajo youth are suffering. Navajo youth and versus the U.S. average in terms of thoughts of suicide, 21.8% versus 17%. Attempted suicide in 2014 was 10.4% versus 8%. Child maltreatment is high rate, 18.3%. And the sexual violence is 25%, 9%. Our highest responsibility as the NE is the care, protection, and nurturing of our children. When our children are struggling, and when they struggle and stumble, they are showing us that we are not meeting our responsibilities. When our children suffer, our nation suffers. They are sacred in our future. We know that youth who are educated in and about their culture and connected to their family and community have self-identity based on their heritage, receive culturally relevant education, and experience culturally based behavior, expectation, and corrections, commit fewer crimes. They stay in school and graduate at higher rates, have higher satisfaction and self-esteem. A peacemaking program offers programs for youth that are designed to provide traditional cultural education. That's what we do with the grant that we have received recently. And we teach culturally based behavioral expectations. And we have developed a curriculum that we use. And we have in the past had at least 40 memorandum of understanding with the various schools where we work with the school board on the teachings on the curriculum that we have developed, and so culturally based behavioral expectation. We develop conflict resolution skills to avoid youth violence. The youth themselves are becoming peacemakers. We create strong mentoring relationship with caring adults. And these could be the peacemakers. We have approximately 200 or more peacemakers that is at the community level. And within our peacemaking program, we have 12 traditional program specialists. They can also be fill the role of a peacemaker as well. And we help troubled youth stay in school. The youth apprentices, peacemaker, are recruited because of their leadership potential and commitment to traditional values. Each youth apprentice receives focused curriculum on peacemaking process and is paired with adult mentor. Adult mentors are also community-based peacemakers or peacemaking program staff. Youth apprentice peacemakers provide support for peers who have severe family problems, drug or alcohol involvement, or have suffered trauma or abuse. Navajo children are more than twice as likely to experience these risk factors than the United States population as a whole. They frequently result in truancy, delinquency, suspension, and expulsion of students who are already adrift. Peacemaking works in 40 schools. That's the minimum that I think we're probably going to go over that amount in the coming days. The youth apprentice peacemaker will work in peer-to-peer counseling. The youth peacemaker will work directly with their peer, overseen by their adult mentor and with support from school administration. Peer-to-peer services assist at-risk youth to stay in school and as accepted members of their peer community. We will train, under this grant, we will train an additional 160 youth apprentice peacemaker to work in at least 40 schools. Their goal is to provide our at-risk young people with the sense of community and support they need to become educated and live in a harmonious life. These young peacemakers will become the cultural leaders of our people in the future. They will carry forward our value of keh. Keh is having and keeping peaceful relations through kinship and respect for ourselves, others, and the world we live in. Keh opens all possibilities. It is hope, wisdom, harmony, and goodwill. It is concern for others, and it gives strength. Keh has sustained the well-being of the individual, family, clan, and the nation for centuries. It is important to know and understand the meaning of keh, which is the obligation we have to help the members of our families, clan, communities, vital. And so peacemaking program is, this is only one portion of it that is focusing on the youth. We also get referral from the court on domestic violence, truancy, and other adverse impact that they're experiencing. We also get referrals from the school. We also get referral from the housing authority, Navajo Housing Authority. And there are people that are coming in as a walk-in to settle their land dispute or their probate matters. And when we get a referral from the court, at that point, we leave everything that is court affiliated behind us. And we put the curtain down, and then we do our peacemaking session, which is a Navajo restorative justice. And when we do that, we start with a prayer. One of the parties would say a prayer. And then we set the rules down, and when the person is talking, they have the floor until everybody has a chance to voice their concern. And then they talk it out until a consensus or some agreement is reached. And at the end, the other party says a closing prayer. And then if everything goes well, then people bring in the food, and then so it's a healing process. It's not about, you did this, you did that, and you're going to pay for it, that type of thing. It's not that. We leave that outside the door. The judges are not involved. The attorneys are not involved. And most of the time, it's the way the Navajos have received their teaching from tradition. And so the people that we have are or very versed in either in traditional or even Christian. So that's how we do peacemaking. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Roman. Really enjoyed hearing about the peacemaking program. It's long-standing. It's always referenced in any of the literature that anybody can look online or read in books or journal articles about peacemaking circles in indigenous communities and tribal communities throughout the United States. So I want to thank you so much. I want to invite our participants in the question and answer box down below to pose any questions you have for either Roman about the Navajo Nation peacemaking program or for Chris with some of in regards to some of the elements that she talked about. And while we're requesting the questions down in the question and answer box, Roman, I have one question for you while we're waiting for questions to come in. I'm wondering about how you made the transition in the Navajo Nation. So it sounds like peacemaking obviously has been an integral part of the culture for millennia, since the beginning of time. I'm wondering how the nation went to more formalizing the peacemaking process and how that came to be. For example, was tribal council, did they pass a resolution? Did elders get together? Could you just give a little bit of history about how it became to be more formalized in the nation?
One of the speaker of the Navajo Nation Council back in the early 2000 established a task force to basically integrate the fundamental law, the one that I talk about, the natural law, traditional law, the customary law, and the common law, into the Navajo Nation Code. So that task force convened a number of traditional practitioners that basically outline the different statutory language. And so then a resolution was developed for the Navajo Nation Council. And in 2002, the Navajo fundamental law was enacted by the Navajo Nation Council. And it basically said that it directed the court to interpret their determinations, their court decision, using the fundamental law. And so what we do these days is that we teach, or we train judges on the content of the fundamental law. And not only that, but it goes into ethics and leadership as well. So we have different teachings that we have, and so but it's basically supported by the Navajo Nation Council at this point. So we get referral even from the President's office in terms of some of the issues that they're dealing with in terms of dispute at the local level.
Okay, thank you so much. It looks like we have a couple questions that have come in the question and answer box. So I'm not sure if this is for both of you or for you, Roman, but it looks like someone had asked, do you believe peacemaking circles can be used
By non-Navajo or by non-Navajo?
By non-native? Yeah.
Yeah, we are getting invitations from some of the surrounding communities that are mostly non-Navajo, mostly in Utah area. And we also have assisted the city of Winslow and also the city of Albuquerque. So they are using some of the techniques, or in terms of providing that services, the peacemaking services. Yes, it's doable. As a matter of fact, I think there's a peacemaking circle that is used by the New York, I believe it's Brooklyn or Bronx or something like that. But it's the entity is Red Hook, and they have a one shop type of things that they, it's a big building that they have. So they have a peacemaking session, then they do referrals to different things, all in one building. So it is used by non-Navajo or non-Native.
Okay, thank you so much.
See, the next question is for youth referrals to peacemakers. Do you have an MOU with the state court? We don't have an MOU with the state court, but we have an understanding. Well, they approach us, and so we're using some of that with the city of Albuquerque, working with one of the judges. So, yeah, we do get referrals from Albuquerque.
Okay, great. It looks like Kurt has another question. How do you select circle keepers, and how many do you have?
Well, for peacemaking, we have about at least 200. But of that, maybe about 50 of them are active, really active. And they're selected by the chapter. We have 110 chapter. And those are like local government. And we have if you know about Navajo, we have about 25,000 square miles in the state of Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah. And we have 12 district courts. So we have 200 of them, and basically they're appointed or nominated by the chapter and referred to us, and then we do the training for them. We train them, and then some of them are more aggressive than others.
This is Chris. When I ran a nonprofit in western Wisconsin, we would have people sign up to be volunteers, and they'd complete a 2-day training, and they would participate as a community mentor. That's someone who sits in the circle and models the process with the participants and holds those values and those peacemaking concepts we talked about. And we probably did 8 to 10 sessions a month, and we probably had 3 to 5 circle keepers. And we selected them by someone who was interested in it, and I'd look for people that sort of exuded that ability to, not just take over and be forceful like a facilitator, or that they had some openness to understand how that process, there's a lot of respect for the process that I think is necessary to have a effective circle keeper. And then there's another question about peacemaking circles can be used by non-native systems that do not have traditional understanding and teachings. I think if people are well-versed or they become students of restorative justice and they work to find ways that restorative justice maybe relates back to their spiritual or religious convictions, that might be possible. It's not as natural, and there's a lot of times of, science is catching up to our indigenous wisdom in finding different ways that people can connect to these things that these ways of being. So I think the balance between it's a way of life and there's certain protocols for it being effective. And a lot of times I always try to teach it's on a continuum. There's sort of least restorative and most restorative, and you can meet. I remember I talked to a school principal and he said, "Oh, we do restorative justice. We force the kid to apologize." And forcing someone to do something is not peacemaking, and just saying you're sorry is not the whole part of it either. So it takes a lot to help people get there if they don't have it. And really it's what are the strengths in your community, what are the cultural practices, what are the indigenous wisdoms in that community, so the community can create it for what it might look like for their own.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Roman. Roman, one thing that I found to be really exceptionally amazing too, I've been working in prevention for quite a number of years. This is Erin Thanukwigan, TA coordinator, is you have over 200 people, adults and youth that are trained as peacemakers. And to me, that's just incredibly amazing, because not only are they working within the program itself as implementing the peacemaking circles and extending those values and principles, but that in their everyday life they're probably indirectly implementing those peacemaking values and guidelines, and that's got to have a positive effect within the community as a whole. So I found that to be especially impressive. Let's see. I think there was one other question we would have before we wrap up. It's from Anna. Is a task force a good place to start if you are working on developing a peacemaking program in your community? And Roman or Chris, go ahead and feel free to respond to that. Is a task force a good place to start?
Yeah, that's how we started ours. It was basically appointed by the speaker at that time, the speaker at the Navajo Nation Council. Mm-hmm. And he had the foresight to identify people that were knowledgeable in not only the traditional but also Native American church as well, and had a lot of discussion on that. But it's something that is going to take a lot of discussion, even the way the way it was implemented and finally enacted by the Navajo Nation Council. There's still some questions, because reservation-wide, there are different ceremonies, like the Inuit ceremonies. There's an imaginary line within Navajo where the eastern side have different psalms that are sung that is different from the west side. So you're going to have that type of discussion throughout, but at the end it's basically putting something on paper, and then it can always be refined at a later date.
Okay, thank you so much for that response. We'll go ahead and move on. We're closing in on at 2:30. I have 2:28. Nick, if you could pull up the last polling question for our participants to see and engage in. It's if you could help us identify if you have gained knowledge on the Circle peacemaking process through this webinar. If you could go ahead and vote on that, that would be extremely helpful for us for future webinars and for our evaluation process. Just give you a couple more seconds and for you to vote on if you've gained knowledge on the Circle peacemaking process. Great. All right, so let's go ahead and close that out. I want to thank you so much for voting and helping us with our evaluation process. We just like to, again, thank Chris so much and thank Roman for sharing their knowledge and experience. I hope that the participants found the information valuable and it is helping you in your outreach and looking to increase your knowledge and skill about circle peacemaking. We'll go ahead and close in a good way. And this is from Dr. D. Bigfoot with the Indian Child Trauma Center. Know that you are sacred. Know that you are honored. Know that you are prayed for. Know that others gave offerings in your behalf. Know that you are not alone. Know that you were known before you came to this place. Know that you have choices. Know that you have a name. Know that many know your name, and know that when you reach, you also are reaching towards others. We want to thank everyone for joining our webinar today, and if you could please go to the survey that is at the bottom. I also want you to acknowledge, or I wanted to acknowledge that there's downloads. There's the PowerPoint download that's below, as well as the Navajo Peacemaking Plan of Operation. They were very nice to be able to share some of their plan of operations so that you can see the background of how they have been operating and gathered together the information. So thank you all again for joining, and until next time, we'll see you.